Okay, the recording. What are the Strata Talks? Basically, these are webinars in which we talk about innovation, startups, and deep tech and funding. We have done several webinars until today about deep tech metrics, IP, technology readiness levels, different funding programs like the EIC Transition and the EIC Pathfinder, go-to-market strategies, and the last one we did 1 month ago was about funding instruments for UK startups. All the recordings and slides are published sometimes on our website, the strata.team, and also on blog.fundingtrip.com. Yeah, basically, as you know, the European Commission Green Deal announced in 2019 aims to make the European Union climate neutral by 2050, but this is going to require an amount of funding, a very important amount of funding that is estimated at 260 billion euro per year. So basically, the European Commission, as well as the European Investment Bank and all national governments across Europe, are deploying different funding programs to boost the decarbonization of the energy transition. During this webinar today, we will try to explain some of them. So first, we'll have Rafael Zavalla, who will present quite briefly how carbon credits work and how carbon credits can also facilitate the energy transition and the decarbonization. Then we will have Rob Gill, who will explain his experience about the European Union Innovation Fund. Then I will take over again, and I will talk about European funding programs, especially Horizon Europe programs for climate tech and clean tech. And I will also talk briefly about the LIFE program. And finally, we will have Martin Stanford, who will explain some UK funds available for clean tech startups. And hopefully we will have time. We will have some time for questions and answers. Yeah, a little bit about Strata. What we do, we basically empower and help tech startups to get funding to reach the market. We have been doing this for about now 5 years, and we basically work on 5 different business areas. No, the most important one is innovation funding. We help tech startups also in clean tech, but also in health tech, get funding, especially from public funding programs such as Horizon Europe, the EIC, Innovate UK, InnoSwitch, and other national entities. We also help manage innovation projects. We have experience and expertise in providing intellectual property strategy services to our clients. And we also help with investor matchmaking and valuation services. And finally, for the companies already entering into the market, we can help better understand, better analyze the markets, perform market analysis, segmentations, and also market entry strategies. We also have developed and promote a platform, an online platform for high-tech investments called fundingtrip.com, where investors and founders can find different tools in order to facilitate the investment readiness and the matchmaking between investors and founders. Yeah, and now I hand over to Rafael Zavalla, who will explain his vision and his view on carbon credits and how carbon credits can help with the decarbonization.
Okay, thank you, David, for giving me the floor. My presentation about carbon credits is very brief. It is the idea is to give a broad idea of how this works and who are the players. Okay, so the first slide we talk about, we're talking about what is the situation. Well, the situation right now is that the amount of CO2 in our atmosphere is in the range of 420 ppms, which has laid the context to increase the temperature in 1 degree in the last 100 years. And we're seeing some effects of that on the Arctic marine ice, which is reducing its percentage yearly, and each decade it decreases 13.10%. At the same time, and caused by the previous, the sea level is increasing by 3.6 millimeters each year. This, of course, has tremendous impact, an important impact, let's say, on the climate, with in some cases creating hazardous storms, in some places high lengths of or long duration of droughts, and in other words, it's changing the environment we are living in, which population and vegetation and animals are accustomed to or can live in, and this brings in a tremendous risk to people and to society. Okay, next slide, please. Now, what is they're facing that problem? There is the climate action context, which was brought up in 2015 from the Paris Treaty by the International Panel for Climate Change. Now, there are a series of decisions, and let's say broadly two, which is the world has until 2030 to cut human-caused carbon emissions in half regarding what we had in 2010, to maintain a 50% chance of avoiding the worst effects of climate change. And the second one is, by 2050, we must reach net zero in net emissions in order to assure that that temperature does not continue rising. Okay. Now, this means companies and organizations will need to use every tool at their disposal to achieve emission reduction goals. And there is something created, a tool called the carbon offsets that I'm going to explain in the next slide, which is one of the tools thought for that. Now, the chart we have here shows the situation in 2018. This has changed very little from where we are right now. We're seeing there that more or less in 2020 we would be in 40 gigatons per year of CO2 emissions. Right now we're a little bit below that. We're in 35.7. It was for 2023, which means that the actions taken are having their impact, but still there is a budget. There's a budget remaining of 250 gigatons of CO2 reduction required to really reach the abatement or the reduction of the CO2 emissions, to not reach those 1.5 degrees Celsius by in the following years, right? So let's go with the next slide. So I'm going to explain right now what is the tool of carbon offsets. Now, first of all, there are two carbon offsets. There's the compliance carbon market, which stems from governments capping emissions that specific industries may create. This is at country level that obliges certain industries and certain companies to reduce their carbon emissions. And Additionally to that, there is voluntary carbon market that includes businesses and individuals creating carbon reducing projects and the purchase of carbon offsets. This means, in other words, that there are the ones that produce and the ones that capture. Now, the idea is that the big companies, once they have reduced the maximum according to their processes and their activities, their emissions, there is the possibility of offsetting carbon emissions, buying those credits to carbon projects that produce them. Now, this is as the chart shows, there is a money going to carbon projects and allowances or CO2 removal accounting for net zero, which is the main aim. Now, behind that, there are two relevant processes, which is the way what do we do to verify each of the points. On the one hand, that the companies are actually putting all the action to get to net zero, and there has to be a commitment, and there has to be a quantification of that reduction. So first, there's a carbon footprint measurement. Then there are setting reduction objectives. There's the implementation, and only after the implementation has been done, then there is the possibility of offsetting and communicating, which is a very important part of this, which refers to the company being recognized or having the possibility to be recognized towards their stakeholders as a net zero carbon emission company. Now, on the other hand, the carbon projects, there is a way to verify that actually those projects are emitting what they are capturing, the CO2 that they're saying that they are abating. That means that there has to be a process of verification, which is done with according to specific methodologies and according to the criteria of certain institutions, organisms that have been created and which are dependent from the IPCC stakeholders. So first, you register the project, then the project is submitted to a validation company, a validation body. The project record is created. Then the proponent submits monitoring report. Those reports are verified by a third party. And then there is the submission and the emission of the project documents that allow the carbon removal certifications to appear in the market and allow third parties, or let's say the companies, to buy it.
You can take my shirts down.
Excuse me, Israel? Okay.
Yeah, I've muted Israel,
Yeah,
I think.
he muted.
He had the microphone open.
That's it. Okay, let's go for the next one. Now, this is an idea of the vision of the players. Now, somehow it is the same slide as before, but changed 90 degrees. That means the companies are in the bottom. Let's say we have the big companies, the Sky, Bulldog, Microsoft, Iberia, big companies who are, let's say, CO2 emitters. Then they go to the consultants who analyze their processes and advise them on what to do and do the follow-up of the actions, and finally certify the emissions that they have and what they should buy to get to net zero. Then we have the carbon credits program owners. Those are the methodology providers, and actually the validators of the carbon projects. Then we have the verifiers, which are the well-known AONOR, TÜVNOR, APLUS, that work in collaboration with the carbon credit program owners. And then there are the platforms where there is a commercial exchange of what we have as carbon credits and what we need as carbon as emitters. Now, and that goes to and then at the top we have the producers let's say the project promoters, which will reduce or will capture the carbon. Okay, so with this view, we can go to the next slide and say, for example, what is the part of the carbon footprint pressure measurement. The methodologies we're using are different. You can use carbon footprint for products and services, and you can have carbon footprint for organizations. Now, here we have the GHG protocol, the PAS 2050. There are many that you can choose depending also on your activity, because some of these methodologies already have specific protocols and specific processes depending on the industry you're in. But basically, these are the most important: GHG, PAS, and diesel. So we go to the next slide. And these are the carbon removal programs, standard and methodologies: gold standard, verified carbon standard, social carbon, which have their own specific methodologies, and you can subscribe to any of them, presenting your projects as innovators, or let's say as a company who is generating a project, right, or who's promoting a project. Go ahead. Now, the European Commission has an initiative to be a certifier of the carbon credits, mainly for three types of projects: permanent carbon removals, carbon farming and carbon storage in products, and carbon storage in long-lasting products. That is mainly for construction. So the permanent carbon removals refer to activities removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and storing it securely with different methodologies. Carbon farming applies to storage in the farms and in the forests, and carbon storage in long-lasting products refers to materials that are implemented in projects, and therefore the projects themselves have the possibility of being considered a carbon reduction under four criteria, which are extremely important. One of them I've talked before. It's quantification. That means it has to be measured, and it has to be audited. The second point is that it has to be additional. This means that the activities that we're carrying out should be something that being done additionally to what the normal market would demand. This means that projects that are self-sustainable without the carbon credits, without the financing of the carbon credits, would not be eligible for this. Okay, so the European Commission, it's not only the European Commission, but also the other certification scopes of the other methodologies also apply these in general, apply these four criteria. The fourth is long-term storage, and the fourth and last is that the projects have to be sustainable from the point of view of the environment. So these aspects are key to be eligible. I want to draw the attention on the additionality, which means that projects should not be economically sustainable and require the extra funding coming from selling the credits. Okay. Let's go to the last slides. Well, this is the European Commission, as David was saying, European Green Deal. We have the EU emission trade systems, which is the key tool for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the European Commission. We have what I've spoken about, EU certification. There are certification methodologies. And finally, there are, let's say, 5 funding schemes, one through the Common Agricultural Policy, the Innovation Fund, the Regional Development Funds, the LIFE Program, and Horizon Europe that David is going to talk about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you very much. Very good explanation about carbon credits. Very nice topic. We will have time to maybe to make you some questions in the end.
Excellent.
Yeah, now I will hand over to Rob Gill, who is CEO of Berntex and has very interesting experience in assessing and in supporting EU Innovation Fund proposals. So we are really excited to hear what Rob is going to tell us. Thank you, Rob.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the invite to speak. So as David said, my name is Rob Gill. I'm the CEO of a very small consultancy company based in the UK called Berntex. And one of the things that we do is we specialise in assisting clients to apply to the EU Innovation Fund for grants for innovative decarbonisation projects. I must stress that I don't work for the EU Innovation Fund. I'm an outside contractor, so I don't speak on their behalf. Just a bit of background, the EUIF was founded in 2020 to finance innovative decarbonisation projects based in the EU, Norway, Iceland and Liechtenstein. And those projects can span a range of sectors, from energy storage, transport fuels, circular chemicals. Oh, sorry, can we go to the next slide, please? Yes, yeah, great. The circular chemicals, CO2 capture and storage, CO2 use, green hydrogen and derivatives such as green steel and green ammonia. There really is a huge range of projects that get financed. And it's financed by selling carbon emission certificates through the emissions trading scheme. So when the EUIF was first mooted in or set up in 2020, CO2 emissions were trading at 20 euros per tonne, and they had 10 billion euros to distribute. The price of CO2 certificates has now risen, and they've now got 40 billion euros to distribute before 2030. So there's a lot of money available for decarbonisation projects. The Innovation Fund can provide up to 60% of the relevant costs of a decarbonisation project. And the relevant costs are roughly defined as the present value of a project versus the present value of an equivalent conventional project over 10 years of project lifetime. And these very much are grants. It's not debt or equity. This is money for free. And the grant is divided into 2 parts. The EUIF are prepared to stump up 40% of the total grant before a project enters operation, with the remaining 60% awarded against measured CO2 savings. So if a project doesn't actually start operation, but obviously all the best intentions were that it would enter operation, then you get 40% of that grant towards development costs, and there's nothing to pay back. And grants are awarded as a result of annual calls for proposals. So each year the amount of cash up for grabs has increased as CO2 prices have increased, and the call, which has just been closed earlier this month, was worth 4 billion euros plus an extra 20%, so really it would be worth 4.8 billion. So if we can just go to the next slide. Just to mention what really are the EUIF looking for? Well, they're looking for projects which can reduce CO2 emissions, projects which are highly innovative, and projects which are able to reach financial investment decision within 4 years. So we're talking about real projects here. We're not talking about research projects. And it's a key difference between the Innovation Fund and the Horizon programme, which was mentioned earlier. Very importantly, it's a single round application. And once you submit an application, there is no interaction with the assessors. Assessors are forbidden to contact anyone at the project. No telephone calls, no presentations. Obviously, assessors can use the internet to carry out research, but there's no applicant, no further interaction. And applications must be assessed based on the project as stated in the application. There can't be the assessors, for example, can't say, well, if only you made these changes, it would score, much more highly. Not allowed to do that at all. And I've seen various examples where I'd like to have changed a project, but I can't. It's a very competitive process. Only 15% of applications are successful in the last call, which is very unfortunate. And each grant in the last call was worth an average of 83 million euros, which is an awful lot of money. This is one of the biggest grant programs that the EU have, which means, of course, that 85% were unsuccessful and worth nothing. And that's a lot of money to be decided by a small team of assessors. And each application is assessed by a small team of 6 assessors, 2 greenhouse gas experts, 2 financial experts, 2 technical experts. And they're each provided with 4 days to look at these applications individually and a day together to decide how to score a particular application. The scoring of the applications is there's a score sheet with weightings given to each section, and key areas of evaluation are, degree of innovation. Is it first of a kind in Europe, first of a kind commercial scale? Well, that's perfectly admissible. Innovative business plans, business models are admissible. So I saw one where 4 companies were getting together to, first of all, capture CO2 from a cement works. Another company was going to produce green hydrogen. And another chemical company was going to take those and produce petrochemicals such as methanol, etc. The second area of scoring is cost per tonne of CO2 saved. Then we get into project maturity, technical, operation, commercial, financial. So technical, IP ownership and licenses, are they in place? Have there been pilot plants? And what are the results of those? How does the project work? And CO2 avoidance calculations, they've got to be put together. Commercial maturity, what's the rationale for the project commercially? Is it needed? Has a location been identified? What's the evidence of supply and offtake contracts and memoranda of understanding? And just as an aside, hydrogen as fuel projects often fall down here because very often there simply aren't off-takers available. The EU Innovation Fund would score a project not very highly if it was a question of building a project and waiting for off-takers to become evident. Operational maturity, where is the project currently in terms of development? Feasibility studies, has a project reached FEED? Is there a project organisation in place? Project execution strategies, there public support, communication plans? And then financial maturity. A financial model needs to be submitted as part of the application. a description of who's going to finance the project, why are they going to finance it, how are they going to finance it, is it off balance sheet, is it going to be using debt, is it an equity raise, and then strong letters of support. And lastly, future expandability and rollout potential. Very important. All of those are marked, and depending on the type of project it is, they might be given different weightings. And all of the projects which have applied in a particular round, and over 300, as you can see in the last round, will be ranked. And the top ranking projects will take up the amount of finance which is available until there's no more finance available. I think that the next call is likely to be worth between 6 and 7 billion euros and close in the first quarter next year. And I really think applicants need to be starting now about the maturity of their projects. Now, I mean, you know, I've personally evaluated 35 applications worth about 5 billion euros. My colleagues have evaluated many more. And it's quite clear when you see an application whether it's been written by a specialist or not. And I would highly recommend, if anybody is looking or seeking to apply for funding from the EUIF, that they seek the services of a consultancy that specialise in this area. And I'm sure David as well, and the Strata team would be delighted to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, for your presentation. I'm sure we will have also questions for you in the end, so please stay with us.
Yeah.
I will continue the presentation with a brief overview, some European programs that are very well known for climate tech and clean tech. I didn't introduce myself. You probably know me already, but I'm the founder of Strata. I've been working with clean tech and startups and for many years, almost 20 years working with startups and helping get funding from private and public programs. And the last around 7-8 years, mostly focused on European programs. Obviously, the first, let's say, program that we can look at when looking for funding for technology and innovation in Europe is Horizon Europe. Horizon Europe is the European Union Research and Innovation Program with a budget of 95.5 billion euro and running until 2027. Of course, after 2027, there will be a new funding program, FP10, and the idea is that the budget will be increased. Obviously, not all this funding goes to clean tech and climate tech. Horizon Europe defines different priorities and different challenges. We have, of course, health, culture, digital innovation, food, agro, the bioeconomy, etc. But I would say an important part of the funding is focused on the energy transition and the decarbonization. Below you have the figure in which we can see kind of diagram depicting the different programs and entities that are managing Horizon Europe budget. But in the next slide, I would like to highlight the European Innovation Council. Is the entity on behalf of the European Commission that is managing the innovation funds, and especially 3 programs that are especially interesting for startups, for SMEs, but also for research and technology organizations and universities. And of course, all these programs are, in general, a very good fit for clean tech innovation projects. The European Commission, the European Innovation Council is managing 1.2 billion euro this year during 2024, and is deploying this capital through 3 funding programs: the EIC Pathfinder, that is focused on early stage technology research. Basically, they are financing projects with grants of up to 4 million euro for projects that are quite early stage with a TRL, technology readiness level, from 1 to 4. Usually the objective of an EIC Pathfinder is to establish a proof of concept. And during this year, we will have a new call closing on the 16th of October, in which there are different challenges, and some of them are actually focused on energy, on sustainability, on clean tech. I will take a look at those later on. We also have, or the EIC also has a very interesting program for technology validation and spin out, a little bit more closer to the market. So usually looking at TRL 2 to 4, 5, the objective of these EIC transition projects is commonly to establish a prototype, and they give grants of up to 2.5 million euro. There is an open call that closes on the 18th of September. And finally, the most popular EIC program, the EIC Accelerator, this is focused on commercialization and scale up. It's very, very attractive for startups, for disruptive startups aiming to bring a high risk, high impact innovation to the market. And the EIC is giving grants of up to 2.5 million euro, together with investments up to 15 million euro per company. And during 2024, there's still one call that is feasible for companies aiming to submit an application that will close on the 3rd of October. In the next slide, we can see the different challenges, especially for Pathfinder and Accelerator. So if we look at the Pathfinder, we have several topics that are related, with clean technologies, with sustainability, with the decarbonization. So solar to X devices, using cement and concrete as a carbon sink, also more sustainable alternatives for food packaging and films. And they are also looking for nanoelectronics for energy efficient devices. And maybe the only one that is not really has no relationship whatsoever with sustainability is the last one, space, probably. The EIC Accelerator on October the 3rd, they have decided to focus quite a lot on digital technologies in this case, but still there is one, at least the last one, is focused on renewable energy sources, and their whole value chain. And probably during next year there will be many more challenges focused on sustainability and clean tech and decarbonization. Since Rob talked quite a lot about the Innovation Fund, I'm not gonna talk again about it, but I just I wanted to discuss just information about the projects approved so far. I found this dashboard made by the European Commission, and basically until today, they, at least the projects that are approved and published and are already public, are 106 projects approved with an EU contribution of 6.55 billion euro. And it's interesting to see that SMEs account for 11%. So obviously most of the projects are led by entities, by bigger entities, and it's interesting also to see the areas. You can see it here. Hydrogen and cement are the biggest ones, manufacturing, chemicals, and also the countries in which Germany is leading the amount of funding acquired, but at the same time Spain is leading the number of projects, or number of participants, sorry. I think this is gonna be about the Innovation Fund. And then I also would like to comment a little bit about the LIFE program. The LIFE program is actually a a quite, let's say, established EU program. In 2024, they will deploy 571 million euro, and it has 4 sub-programs. One is focused on clean energy transition, another one in climate change mitigation and adaptation. The LIFE program actually is not especially focused on technology, and that needs to be clear, but actually they are financing projects that, of course, use technology. So it could be a program that can finance the deployment of commercial, high-impact commercial clean tech and climate tech solutions. Not innovation, because actually innovation is not really a strong, an important criteria for evaluation. And finally, I just wanted to comment on, of course, all the programs that are available at European level that can finance energy-related clean tech, climate tech projects. We have the Connecting Europe Facility, CEF. This program, this instrument is financed mostly infrastructure deployment, but they are financing quite a lot of sustainable transport projects and sustainable energy projects. We also have the CETP, which is the Clean Energy Transition platform. They are financing R&D and innovation projects, multilateral, so with some requirements on requiring the participation of different types of entities and countries. We also have, of course, the European Investment Bank that is especially quite active in providing venture debt to, for instance, transport startups, but also some energy scale-ups. I would say more scale-ups than startups. They actually work as a bank, so their criteria is usually relies quite a lot on the financial side of the projects. The projects need to be quite strong in terms of financial feasibility. And finally, of course, we have a very well-known program called Eurostars that is also financing joint R&D projects, and in which we can also find many innovations in the clean tech field financed by Eurostars. And this is my last slide. So I will give the floor to Martin Stanford now, who will continue talking about UK funding instruments for clean tech startups.
Thanks, David. Next slide, please. So I'm Martin with Strata. So David's talked a lot about public funding, and the Innovation Fund is obviously a public fund. I think something that's quite important in the UK is we have a lot of private funds that are funding specifically clean tech, or are very focused on clean tech and climate tech. So there's a very active private investment scene. And I think that's quite important, because if you're going for public funding, you do need to raise, in most cases, you need to raise co-financing. But also in the UK, we have the SEIS and the EIS schemes that are very attractive for private investors. So this can be a very good source of funding. So I've just put up here some logos of some of the bigger funds that invest either specifically in climate tech, or have very large, or have had very large investments in clean tech in the past. And then on the left, Seedrs and Crowdcube are obviously the big crowdfunding platforms in the UK. And I think this is a very common way and a very good way to raise quite significant capital, either for co-financing non-dilutive grants, or for funding scale-up or technical development. Actually, Seedrs and Crowdcube, perhaps unsurprisingly, have funded more companies than any of the other VCs or angel networks. So it's really worth looking at crowdfunding, especially if you have a very eye-catching pitch or good video that you can upload to the websites. Next slide, please, David. So in terms of going for VC or angel investment, the two schemes that are really important are the SEIS and the EIS. So the SEIS, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, is specifically for very small companies, so for startups, with a balance sheet of less than £350,000, less than 25 employees, and less than 2 years old. And it works by giving investors very substantial tax relief, which significantly incentivizes investment in these tech companies or early stage companies. And companies can raise up to £150,000 through the SEIS, which aligns very well with co-financing for some of the earlier grants in the UK, so the Smart Grant, for example. Investors can invest 100,000 per tax year, but companies can only raise £150,000 each across their whole lifetime. And the EIS is kind of the big brother or sister to SEIS. That's for companies at a later stage. So the balance sheet can be up to 15 million, up to 250 employees, and up to 7 years old. And their companies can raise up to £12 million in total across their lifetime. One thing that maybe not everyone is aware of is if you are a tech company, like a climate tech or a clean tech company, then you could be classified as a knowledge-based company, which means that you can apply with slightly more relaxed criteria. So many deep tech companies don't meet this 7 years old requirement, but if you're classified as knowledge-based, the only requirement is that your first sales of more than £200,000 were less than 10 years ago. So you can actually be a much older company. And in that case, you can also raise more money. You can raise £10 million annually or £20 million in total across the company lifetime. And to classify as knowledge-based, you basically have to be investing a significant amount of your resources into R&D, specifically human resources personnel. Next slide, please. This is just a quick graph from Deloitte. This is specifically for clean tech companies in the UK. And it was just to give an indication that private investors are investing substantial funding into clean tech. There's a huge appetite for it. So there's definitely money there. Next slide, please. And then in terms of non-dilutive funding in the UK, or grant funding, the main grant that everybody applies to, the most prominent, with multiple deadlines every year, is the Smart Grant, which is for single applicants for £500,000 projects. But maybe more relevant is competition funding, which is published on the Innovate UK website. And these are for specific topics, for specific categories of consortia or specific areas of the UK. And they vary in terms of eligibility criteria, stage of development, but there are very frequently calls for climate tech and clean tech, which would be part of something like the Energy Catalyst or some of the bigger UK energy funds. And they all get published on the same website, on the Innovate UK website, so it's easy to monitor them. Knowledge transfer partnerships are really for research organizations, but if you're an early stage company working with a research organization, then that can be very applicable. And at the bottom there, investor partnerships. Again, this is an Innovate UK funded scheme where you apply for an Innovate UK grant alongside an aligned equity from one of the investor partners of Innovate UK. So this is a very attractive scheme if you need quite substantial funding. Next slide, please. So actually, I think we can skip over this quite quickly, but Smart Grants, it's up to £500,000. If you're working as part of a collaboration, you can receive up to £1 million for the whole project. The funding rate can be up to 70%, so this is where it's important to also consider private investment for the final 30%. And typically there's about £100 million worth of budget per year. Next slide, please. So in terms of the competition funding, or the specific funding for clean tech, these are just some examples of competitions that are currently open or very recently were open. And it's just to give an idea of what kind of projects are funded and the kind of the level of eligibility. So 3 of these are for feasibility studies. 1 is for green corridors. 1 is for bio-based materials. So that's actually co-funded by the BBSRC, but it's focused on low carbon manufacturing. And then the bottom 2 are for the bottom left is for automotive, low carbon automotive supply chain. And on the right is for, again, for zero emissions, but for market demonstrator rather than feasibility studies. So these kinds of calls are coming up all the time. They vary. There's not enough time to go into each of them today, but if you're interested, then just get in touch. Next slide, please. And the final thing, which isn't really funding, but I think is very relevant for clean tech and climate tech companies in the UK, is the Catapult network, which is a network of 9 different catapults, which are designed to build networks with industry, government, and SMEs, working on innovations and R&D in the UK. 2 of the 9 are very specifically focused on clean tech and climate tech. So 1 is the Energy Systems Catapult, and the other is the Offshore Renewable Energy. And then the 3 at the bottom, high value manufacturing, semiconductors, and connected places, also have some loose ties to climate tech. So this isn't really a source of funding, but if you need access to cutting edge R&D, or if you need access to labs or researchers, the catapults are really, they provide very good support. I think that's it. Next slide. I don't think there's any more.
No.
Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you very much for the presentation. So does anyone want to make a question? I have some questions otherwise.
Oh, yes, I'd like to ask, I'm Rafael Zavala. I'd like to ask Rob, how much time is required normally to prepare an innovation fund project? Because it seems that it's it must be very demanding in the amount of information provided and the research to be done.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, it is. It is very demanding. And, you know, it's not to be entered into lightly. There's a lot of work and a lot of documents that need to be submitted, a feasibility study, a business plan, CVs of all the core participants. You need a communications plan. How are you going to communicate, you know, the project to the wider world? If the EY has given somebody 80 million euros and they expect some sort of information from that. Yeah, it is. And that's why it's particularly sad that such a small percentage of projects or applications are successful. And you know, you've got a big dividing line, 85 or 83 million euros for a successful application, nothing, a complete waste of time for those which are unsuccessful. I've seen people prepare these within a month. I don't think there'll be winning applications if they're prepared within a month. I think that, you know, you really need to understand what you need to have in place in terms of evidence to show maturity for a project. I think that's much more important than thinking about the time taken to put together a project, and that's why it's useful to talk to somebody or talk to a company who are used to preparing these or used to assessing these, because they can help you sort of 12 months out to understand exactly where you are and what you need to have in place. Otherwise, you could end up spending an awful lot of time applying for an application, applying for a grant, and you stand no chance of getting it.
Excellent. So did I understand correctly? You more or less, the preparation is 1 year before.
Well, I think so, but then again, I'm a consultant specialising in this area, so I would say that, wouldn't I? But 1 month, 1 year, 6 months in advance. You know, if somebody's thinking of applying for a grant in Q1 next year, when the next round, I think, when the next call will close, I think it'd be worth looking at the project now and going through it with a consultant to do a gap analysis of, you know, where you are now, where you need to be, and what you need to have in place over the next 12 months in order to show sufficient maturity to really be in with a chance of winning a grant. It's extremely competitive.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I have one question for Martin. Do you know a little bit more about how these catapult organizations work? I think it's really interesting, but I'm trying to kind of find a similar organization in other countries, but I don't know. Is it kind of a cluster organization? But you said they also facilitate access to labs and consultants. So how does it work?
Yeah, it's in essence, it's a network of labs and R&D infrastructure across the UK. So if you want to get in touch with them, you basically on their website they have different sections for SMEs, for research centers, or for companies, large companies that are interested in collaborating. So it's basically a networking facility. And then you can use, if you make an application or you join the network, then you have access to the R&D infrastructure. So it depends which angle you're coming from. But if you're coming from the SME angle, then they have calls for companies that want to join business acceleration type services, and also kind of technological development R&D infrastructure type services. So it's kind of, there's not really a set route into it. I think it's more kind of complex. It's more like a network where, yeah, if you manage to join, then you have access to a lot of resources.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, maybe one final question from my side for Rafael. What kind of organizations or projects are being currently being implemented to use basically the carbon credits to offset the carbon emitted by the big companies? Is it only about decarbon? Is it only about what I receive is mostly about foresting and reforesting in developing countries, but
yes, well,
any other type of projects?
Yes, there are also carbon dioxide abatement projects. That means technologies, the use of technologies to abate CO2 and store through, for example, through gas absorption, or through algae or other systems. The important thing, the thing, I think that the opportunity, and maybe that's where your question is going through, is going to. The idea is that these kind of for innovation projects, I think that CO2 carbon credits can be a good way to perform or to carry out a demonstration project. Let's say that, for example, if you want to develop a technology for carbon dioxide abatement reduction, or let's say an offside or a collateral project where there is abatement, or that brings in abatement, then there's a good possibility of going through carbon credits to get part of the funding, to fund the project, which is not self-sustainable economically. Okay, so I would suggest that yes, startups can be can be the startups in CO2 abatement can be very interested, or in activities that have CO2 abatement in parallel. The same, for example, for carbon storage, long-lasting products, where they involve bio-based and timber construction materials, for example, okay, designed to store during more than 35 years. That's another one. If there is a project, if there is a product, a bio-based product or timber product that you want to produce, and you can generate a construction, and you need some funding for that construction using that product. That can be also a channel. It's true that normally carbon farming is in our idea, but say for technology from product or from CO2 abatement, I think there are also good possibilities for startups and cleantech activities. Yes.
Hello, I also have a question for David. I'm Eugenio, and first of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very insightful. And I have a question for applying to the EIC Pathfinder, because the question is, how far should the project be developed? Because I'm not gonna dive in the actual project, but it's an innovative agrivoltaic project, and we still don't have a proof of concept. So do you think it's too early as a stage to actually apply for the grants, or you think it could be useful to apply?
Yeah, thank you, Eugenio, for the question. No, not at all. So the objective of the EIC Pathfinder is to reach proof of concept. So you can actually start with a technology readiness level 1, or almost from, let's say, nothing. No, so you don't. It's not required that you have a proof of concept from the beginning of the project.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. It was very insightful.
Okay, Lucia, yeah, please.
Hello, thank you for the webinar. It was very, very interesting. I have a question for Rafael, because I'm not sure if I understood well, but how is possible, or how is the process that a small startup can contact with a big corporate for the to get the funding, or there is like a mediator, or you have, like a startup, you have to contact with consulting like Strata in order to facilitate the contact with the corporate?
Yeah, no, actually there is a market, and there are different platforms. I think there was one of my slides showed some of the players. There are different platforms where you can upload your carbon credits, and all the information for anybody, for a big company to go to your project. Let's say that would be the digital way. On the other hand, the consultants themselves, let's say the consultants that do the footprint and audit, excuse me, the footprint consultancy and the net zero activities, the definition, these also have access to these platforms, or have a lot of information regarding what the companies they are working for, the type of CO2 CO2 credits that they want. For example, let's say a company that is in power, and it's emitting a lot of CO2, might want to, for example, be in renewables, because in that way, according to their own ESG, they can win, let's say, credibility in the market and towards the shareholders, selecting those projects that are more akin to their activities, or that can really add more value to their image and identity.
Okay, thank you. Because I was thinking that maybe through the platform in digital ways is more difficult, because there are like a huge amount of projects and startups, and maybe if there is a facilitator or contact in the middle, it's easier for the startups, right?
Exactly. So you have the consultants, you can go to them. They have companies that might be interested in your specific ones. Yeah, and you have the nowadays everything's offline and online.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. So we're gonna leave it there. We have run out of time. So yeah, thank you very much for your participation. And yeah, we will publish the webinar online, and you should receive an email soon with details on how to download it. So thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon and nice bank holidays ahead.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye
Thank you very
bye.
much.
Thank you very much. Bueno, yo creo que